YouTube, how you doing? Murph here, bringing you a tutorial on lubing stabilizers without actually taking them out of the board. Obviously, it's never going to be as effective or as good as actually lubing the stabilizer outside of the keyboard and then putting them back onto the PCB, but there are a variety of reasons that people choose not to do that. Some people don't have the tools, and some people just don't have the time. Some people feel it's unnecessary to do that on a cheaper keyboard, just a little bit more of a time commitment than they're looking for. Whatever your reason is for wanting to do it a little bit of a quicker or easier way, it's really not a big deal. But to understand where we're going to be applying the lubrication, we're going to discuss kind of what you would do if you were actually lubing the stabilizer in the first place. There's three main parts of the stabilizer that you're going to want to apply lubrication to. The first part is the inside of the housing. You're going to lightly to moderately lube the whole inside of this housing. The second main part is to apply a light to moderate coating of lubrication to the whole outside of the stem. And then the third place you're going to want to apply lubrication is on the wire itself. You're going to apply a moderate amount of lube to the wire from the tip all the way down this kind of 90-degree elbow here, and then about an extra ½ inch to an inch up the wire. This wire is going to be connecting to the housing probably about here, just off of this 90-degree elbow here. So you want to make sure there's lubrication here and even a little bit past that. And you're going to want to do that to both sides. So since we're not taking the board apart and we're not going to be able to have full access to all of that, we are going to do what we can to replicate that with what we can see on the keyboard itself. So we're going to start by taking off the space bar here. Now again, you're not going to have full access to the inside of the housing, obviously, because we're not taking the stabilizers off. So to kind of replicate that, remember one of the first places we wanted to apply lube, if we were doing this the correct way, would be the inside of the housing and the outside of the stem. So to kind of replicate that, there's kind of two ways you can apply lube here. The first is by getting a syringe full of lubrication. You can either get a syringe and fill it yourself, or you can actually buy them pre-made like this. And that gives you really good access, especially to certain parts like the wire down in there. This isn't my favorite method because I find it's just a little too difficult to apply just as much lubrication as you need. I typically tend to over lube when I use a syringe. So the way that I'm going to do it here is with just your typical brush and lubrication. I'm using Krytox 205 grade 0 here. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a light amount of lubrication to the tip of the brush. And it's a little bit harder to overlube a stabilizer compared to a switch, but you still don't want to apply too much. The same methodology still applies. You can always add a little bit more lubrication if you need, but it's very difficult to get lube off of a switch or a stabilizer, and it's almost impossible in this case because the whole reason we're doing it this way is to avoid taking the stabilizer off of the PCB and taking the board apart and doing it that way. The first thing we're going to do to kind of replicate the lubrication inside of the housing on the outside of the stem is we're going to lift up the stem here. And you can do this with your fingers, but I find it a little bit easier if you have a pair of tweezers or pliers or something like that. And you just lift up the stem, and then you're going to go all the way around the outside of the stem. With the lubrication. And then once you're done with that, you're going to kind of move it up and down and back and forth. And what that's going to do is that's going to help get a little bit of that lubrication on the inside of the housing, which is very important when you're actually lubing a stabilizer. But again, we're not able to get inside of there because we're kind of taking the shortcut way here. So you want to kind of move it around and get as much of that lubrication inside as possible. And then you are going to do the same thing for the other side. Get a little bit more lubrication on the brush. And it's pretty easy, especially considering the bristles of the brush are pretty fine, so they'll get inside of that housing pretty well anyways. Kind of move it around. And then again, the third part that we worry about is the wire itself. So you can kind of see in here, you can see the wire inside of the keyboard there. You're just gonna get a moderate amount of lube in there, especially where it connects to the housing. That's the most important part, but really you can get it all over that wire in there. Be careful not to get any lube on the PCB. It's probably not gonna have any effect, but essentially that PCB is just a giant circuit board, so you really don't wanna risk it. Just be careful where you're getting that lubrication, but make sure it's going where you need it to go. And that's it. And then you would do that for all of the stabilizers on the keyboard. And that's the easy way of lubing your stabilizers without removing them from the keyboard itself. This is a really easy way to do it. Is it going to be as effective as doing it the correct way? Definitely not. But if you have a cheaper keyboard and just don't feel like taking everything apart, or if you don't have the tools to do that, or if you don't know how to do that, if you're a little bit new to building keyboards or you haven't taken one apart or anything like that, then this will be an easy and yet fairly effective way of kind of replicating those results. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys. If you found this video useful at all, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. If you would like to see any other content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and YouTube, we'll catch you later.